Jevel von 25 Jahren in dem Shabbos. Sag weiß in dem Sipur von Rebbe Zechana und der Rebbe erzählt in Kamonus Chois sie gewähnt mein Seder Abschie Korf vielleicht gehen davenen in der Heim. Es ist am 7 nicht gerne als Grace und die was haben gewollt sitzen und davenen von gehen Heim davenen noch ein Minion. Und Mensch Schemte wird ihm gesagt in der Früh, als heute die alte Kislev darf machen und Farbrengen. Hat sich ein bisschen geheilt in Davenen und noch in Davenen ist gegangen schnell auf Kingston Avenue zu gehen zu der Farbrengen. Als Rebbe Zechana hat ihm gesehen, sie gefragt, was geht in der Richtung, was geht das schnell. Hat gesagt, dass Mensch Schemte geht ein Farbrengen, was da heute die alte Kislev, der Rebbe ist Tag vergessen. Später hat der Rebbe ist heimgekommen, jenem Nacht, seine Mutter hat der Rebbe Zechana gefragt, man sagt, der Mensch Schemte wird ihn verbracht. Wie hat verbracht? Hat der Rebbe gesagt, das ist so viel gut. Ich verbringe, man sagt, der Mensch hat verbracht. Es ist gewähnt Appelle. Andere Nusschois. Ist Tovshin Yudal ist gewähnt der bewusste Farbrengen, was der Rebbe hat sich jemalt gerät offen zu den Chassidim in einer Neifen, als das ist der Tag, was verbunden die Chassidim mit den Rebben und der Rebbe mit Chassidim. Was sicher, ich weiß, dass mit gerät auf heintige Farbrengen, man geht her in historische Sachen, mit gerät auf ein Video, historische Sachen von der Chassner von Rebben, man geht jetzt von Rabbi Krinsky und alle, was wollen erzählen, wie wird gefeiert, leider Kolashonim, aber was eine sichere Sache bei Chassidim, der Ingen von Kesher Atzmi mit den Rebben, ist ein Kesher Atzmi. Da nicht die Menschen von der Historie, was wissen, wenn der Kesher sich angeben. Aber das, was der Rebbe gelost, als dem Tag, Gidal Kislev, ist ein Tag, was hat ein Scheiches, was gibt ein Scheiches von Rebbe zu Chassidim, und was gibt ein spezieller Ort, als wir sollen sich kennen mit Kasher sein zum Rebbe. Und nicht nur das, ein Tag, was verbunden mir mit euch, aber ich euch mit mir. Als das, was Chassidim wollen tun in von sehr Weg, von unserer Seite. Als wir wollen mit keinem sein. Das, was der Rebbe will, ist sicher, wollen uns mit Kasher sein zum Rebbe. Es ist noch gewisse Empfers, was mit gesehen, leider Kolashonim, sei von Bachrim, sei von Schluchim, was mit geschrieben zum Rebbe, gewisse Scheidels, wenn ein Mensch was gerät, also wird Lav Davke sich führen in Efen, wie der Rebbe will, und wird Mechile, und wird gehen zu gewisse Plätze, wo es Lav Davke ist, der Ruach von Rebbe. Aber wird gleich zurück sich ziehen zu seinen Kasches zum Rebbe. Und der Rebbe gesagt, dass kann sein, als du ziehst dich weg von den Kasches zu mir, aber du sollst gedenken, in alle Sachen, was du tust, schleppst du mir mit. Das heißt, dass der Kasches von Rebbe zu uns ist leider Kolashonim und das ist nicht mapsig. Ich meine, als jetzt ist eine gute Zeit, zu sagen, eine Introduction von der nächsten Redner, was wir reden in den ersten Jahren von Tovshin Yud Dalid. Die wir haben gefeiert mit den Reben beim Oneb, die Jema Chassene. Rav Krinsky ist eine Maske von Reben, was hat sich gegeben, leider Kol Ashonim, zu sein Mekurev Lobeis Harav. Und beschaß mir redet wegen der Chassene von Reben, mit den Rebetzen, was der Sache erzählt von der Beis Harav, was das gewinne immer, wo der Rebbe sei reingekommen in den Stub und aufgegeben in der Hand und gesagt, Mazel Tov zum Rebetzen. Das ist ein größter Tag bei der Rebbe und der Rebetzen. Aber jeder Rabbi Kinski kommt so, will ich sagen, als ich eingelernt als sicher, was der Rebbe hat gesagt, beschasse gewinne, Yud Gimel Elul, Pei Hei Shona, von Yud Gimel Elul, von der Chaste von der Friedrich Rebbe. Und dort in der Rebbe Masbir, eine spezielle Sache von Pei Hei Shona. Jetzt hätten wir wegen Zadig Shona, aber was sage ich wegen Pei Hei Shona? Weil ein paar Nacht ist ein spezieller Tag bei Rabbi Krinsky. Und wir will manche mal richtig sagen, wir schauen mit Tevis, es ist ein jemand Ledes. Und der Rebbe's Masbir dort als Pei Hei ist das Ding von Chesed. Wie bald hast du da 5 Finger in der Hand und jeder Finger ist Tev, 5-mal Tev das Pei Hei. Und mit Meile, Ribu Chassodim, das ist der Ring von der Suin. Nisuin ist Dinge von Rebbe Chassan. Das ist Rebbe Masber Nasiche von P.H. Shona von der Fiedeke Rebbe. Ich meine, es ist ein richtiger Weg zu beten auf Krinsky, sagen ein paar Werte wegen Tofshin Judalit, wie dich Siddim haben es jemand gefühlt, was hat Zeichen gewinnt, Leirach Kol Hashonim, zu sein mit Kurel und Beis Arav und bei Ifen Shal Chesed, wie mit das einmal gesehen war ich, und wir verbringen heint bei Nacht und helfen uns mit unseren Skashas zum Reben und sehen, wie wir das gefeiert in jenen Jahren und whatever you want to say, Rabbi Krinsky. 20. Can I give you l'chaim, Rabbi Krinsky?
You must.
It's a special day for you. It's a l'chaim. Sorry, that's the rule.
It's actually tonight.
Tonight as well. I know.
What?
Tell us the story about the cake. Tell us the story about the cake.
I don't know what to tell them. I'm shakel liyabed v'rei. L'chaim. Amen. L'chaim. I'll answer your question. I'll start with answering your question. Als ich mit Megala gewinnt, als mein Jumelades, ich bin geboren worden, heim bei Nacht, 5 Jahre zu der Show, nach der Rebbe-Chassene von Peters. Rendig wegen beide Sachen zusammen, sie gewesen in Tofshin am Zayin, dachte ich mir, wo es der Rebbe gefahren auf ein Nehol, 3 Tage nacheinander, mit dem Kislev. Judalit Kislev, Tesvav Kislev und Judalit, Tesvav und Tezayin. Und das ist gewesen Tofshin am Zayin, das ist gewesen kurz nach dem, 2 Wochen nach dem, was die Zwarim sind zurückgekommen. Mistame weiß, dass sie gewesen einmal mit den Zwarim, und sie gewesen ein Tevis, sie gehen jetzt da ein Tevis, das ist noch halb ein Jontef, weil beim Rebbe das ist ein Jontef. Hat mir gewonnen der Mischpit, mit einer Zerr gewesen, und der Defendant, das was mit dem genommenen Court hat gemacht einen Appeal, und das hat gedauert noch ein Jahr, und sie hat gern der Trophäe Marcheshwan, ein paar Wochen zurück auf den Kalender, und mit gewollt haben, das war im zurückgefahren Appeal. Der Bischof hat gesagt, nein, mit warten bis noch ein Appeal. Und ich schrieb durch Kislev, Beis Kislev, mit gefahren, nach dem Netzochen von Chofei Marcheshwan, und mit gebracht das war im Beis Kislev. Und das, der Rebbe gefahren, die 3 Mal auf ein das gewinnen etliche Wochen, 2 Wochen nach dem. Der Rebbe gerät auf dem Weg verschiedene Sachen, bekescht zu dem Tizos von dem Mischpot. Und der Tag vor Chamish Lasser bei Kislev habe geschrieben dem Rebbe Mapan, gebeten eine Broche, für die Jemeledes. Und hat mir geschrieben Beksav, der Rebbe begann mit Beksav. Nach dem Vorendeck auf zurück von Nehel, hat der Rebbe mir gegeben Mazel Tov, für die Jemeledes, und gefragt etliche Sachen. Und auf morgen, Tezayin, kommen die zurück, der Rebbe fahren ihm nach Meirev, leben im Stub, in Backyard, und fragt bei mir, ich sehe, was ist der Jemeledes, ich hatte ein Cake. A cake, wie sagt man das davon? A birthday cake. Ich habe nicht gewusst, was entfernen. Ich dachte, ich habe gesagt, Bescheid, ich bin ein Engel, aber ich hatte Birthday Cake. Da habe ich das Schmeichel getan, ich sage, wir können das noch mit Sachen sein. Ich habe nicht gewusst, dass es bei Nacht kommen, die geheim, Cake sind nicht, aber wir können das noch mit Sachen sein. Und auf morgen hat mir gefragt, so mit das mit Sachen gewesen. Begonnen, dass der Ehre von Paschies von meinen eigenen Chaim Protein und der Tag von der Rebbe-Chassene. Ich weiß nicht, im Zedov, was gewesen, Judalit, Kislev Tofshin Judalit, im Zedov, was gewesen bei der Farbrengen? Anybody? I'm the only one? Und ich weiß nicht, was du willst hören. gelernt dem das sicherte gesehen. Was wenn das reden? Der Rebbe das gewinnt als Preis verbringen. In jenen Jahren vielleicht der Rebbe nicht verbringen, als wie später kommt alle Shabbos. Shabbos mit Wochen, der Rebbe hat Bakoshe von Rebbe, also soll verbringen alle Shabbos mit Wochen. Bechol even, der Rebbe hat angefangen reden, ich habe jenen verbringen, wegen ihnen von Minhagi Chabad. If you know it already, stop me, I'll go to something else. Und hat gesagt, dass sie gewinnen in Jonim, was bei der Rebbe gewinnen Minhagim von dem Rebbe, und er hat nicht gewusst wegen dem, aber in den letzten Jahren hat der Rebbe gesagt, von schwer, später die Jahren, besser gesagt, hat der Rebbe Megala gewinnen, in Jonim Minhagim, was früher das gewinnen bei Helm, und der Rebbe hat das getan, als Schliach von Klal Yisrael, aber nicht bei dem Rabbi, aber das ist schön weg, das ist Europa. Und Heint ist alle, der Rebbe mit alle Minhagim, und Heint auf jeder eine Tonne Sachen, hat gedacht, der Rebbe gegeben ein Moschel, was die Arab, die Minhagi von gewissen Yechidim, oder Kurzes, von denen von Nägelwasser. Als Chabad, wasst man Nägelwasser 3 Mal. Und Bechlal geht man zu der Quart mit der Handtag auf den Plätze. So führt man sich. Und das ist geworden, sagt der Rebbe, bei allem angenommen, nicht nur bei Noshim und der Sheikh Chabad, und er ist zufrieden von dem, und das ist eine Heira, ein Beweis, wie der Minhagi Chabad sein vor allem, und man darf sich nicht schrecken, und bechule. Ich habe dann gehört, was am Anfang Farbrengen nicht kennt, es sein, dass sie Maragesh. Inmitten Farbrengen hat der Rebbe gesagt, ich nennt es zum Sofen Farbrengen. Ich habe gewinnt der Zeit, wo der Rebbe gesagt hat, das ist der Tag, was hat uns gebracht zusammen. Verbunden mir mit euch und ihr mit mir. Und wir können sagen, das ist ein Indien bei uns, bei Klal Yisrael von Mattentäre. Und das ist eine Sache, was man darf es gut überleben, in einem guten Weg. Und ich will nicht sagen, ich habe es schon, wenn es wollte, gewesen anders. Aber in dem Minion, was gewesen in der Kude von der Chassene, bald werden wir nicht für 90 Jahre, was in der Kude von der Chassene, was gewesen what made it possible, bepasst ist, dann gewesen der Rebbetzin. Der Rebbe hat gesagt, was er gesagt hat, das gewinnt so, das hat der Rebbe aufgetan, das hat sie getan, als wir sollen haben Areben, an der Welt sollen haben Areben, und nicht bekehren die Welt, und bringen Mashiach. Ich kann euch erzählen, ein paar Jahren von Rebbe, zusammen mit den Rebbe, etliche Sipurim. Ich weiß nicht, wo uns anfangen. Ich bin ein young boy, a teenager, gekommen von Boston, lernen, und Topshin Zion. Ja, ein junger Bocher, Farbe Mitzvah, etliche Gedoschen Farbe Mitzvah. Und rein in die Kittes, Bechlal, beschaß die Eltern zusammengerät sich wegen mir, ich bin am Sinnig, die jüngste von 9 Kindern. Und I was very much loved, if you understand English, by the family, brothers and sisters. And, you weren't there. And it was very hard. Can I speak in English? Okay, great. It was very hard for them to send me away, and it was hard for me to go away. It wasn't like today, you come to New York, you have, can I know the Chaver Masach, and gute Freund Asach. That's how it's supposed to be. So I came. I was supposed to come after Zman Alimud, Haschol Zman Alimud, after Simchas Torah. And my parents thought if he's going to go after Simchas Torah, our house was the Chabad, one of the few Chabad houses in America, where the Rebbe dort gehabt the Balabatischkeit. And it was a very Chassidish house. I don't go into my background. That I've been blessed with a wonderful parents and siblings. Very, very blessed. But we had no mishpacha in New York, and I had to go to the dormitory. And my parents felt that if one of my older brothers was going back to New York for Shmini Atzeres, so they said Yudel should go along with him, which was a very wise decision. So I went along with my brother. We got to New York the day before Hoshana Rabbah, and my brother found a bed in the dormitory for Bochum who were from out of town and had left for Yontif. And Hoshana Rabbah came, and I ganz Tillim noch Hatzeis Laila. And I went with my brother from the dormitory in Albany Avenue to 770. We walked, opened the door from 770, and the Rebbe steht by the Ständer. In the tier, the first door when you go in, the second door from the Americas. Gestanden gesagt, Tillim. I had met the Rebbe before in New York a few years before by a chasana from a chutanim from the Hecht family, but I didn't get a chance to see him up close. This he was right, Bedel Adamis. Huh?
Before didn't see us, right?
Tafshin Zayin. And the Rebbe was respected in my house where I grew up, of course, the Friedrich Rebbe. And then the Rebbe, als Chassan of the Benasir, was very much known and very, very respected by my family. There are a few times that I remember as a young boy, the Rebbe would call my father on the telephone about certain things in Boston, Dorchester. And we knew that the Rebbe is something very special that we don't know what it really is. In any case, I saw the Rebbe then, and I just stood and looked as much as I could without being obtrusive. And then the Shmini Atzeres, as Simchas Teda, the Hakovas by night, the Rebbe would eat upstairs with the Rebbe's and by the Friedrich Rebbe. And some Bochrim, about 10, 12 Bochrim, would wait downstairs, even then, in honor of the Rebbe. The Rebbe came down, he walked into the Beis Medrash, and he sees 10, 15 Bochrim. I was one of them. It had hakofis. No, we didn't have any kofis. Nobody cared about us. And so he stood there till about 1 o'clock in the morning. The hakofis, it started about 11:30. And everybody had a coffee and mit getanzt, sikvesen. Who's going to speak to him? All I know is we were in the Rikud, and I wouldn't put my hand on the Rebbe Chas v'Shalom, but I wanted the Rebbe to put his hand on my shoulder in the Rikud. And I was Matzliach a few times in the Rikudim. I'll never forget that. At that time, the Friedrich Rebbe used to Farbrengen, Yomei Pagre, Simchas Teda, and of course Yud Beis Tammuz and Yud Kislev. They used to make downstairs in the Zal for the Elam Suda. But B'chol the Rebbe would Farbrengen upstairs, the Friedrich Rebbe, and a boy like me, a young kid, could not get in. The whole Farbrengen, the Rebbe, if you've ever been upstairs, there's a big dining room with a long table. That's where the Rebbe Farbrengen. It's unchanged as it was then. And I would push with the Alter Chassidim, the Lange Weiße Berd, and I didn't have a chance. But there are two doors to go into the second floor, to the Friedrich Rebbe's apartment. There's one with the wooden steps, the mosquitoes right outside the Rebbe's door. There's wooden steps, we used to call it. In the middle of the building, there's the green steps, yeah. So there were two ways to get in. So sometimes I stood before Farbrengen to get in. I stood by this door, I stood by that door. People came, they went right by me, and it didn't work. I couldn't get in. Maybe a year passed, I couldn't get in. But I didn't give up. So one time I'm standing there in the kitchen, to the kitchen door, and the Rebbetzin opens the door. She gives a look. She knew, I don't know if she knew who I was, but she knew I was there. She said, Ge'erein. That Ge'erein, I'll never forget. Talking about indebted to somebody. I went in, came into the room, the Rebbe sitzt bei der Tisch, der Streimel. Der linke Seite given the Rebbe, der rechte Seite der Shag. There are probably 12, 15 people sitting around the table. and another 20, 30 standing around. They had to be the Rebbe wasn't well, as you know, and they had to be very, very careful. The air should be fresh, and they wouldn't let in too many people. That was the doctor's orders. And this little kid comes walking in, and I was in Chizis by the Rebbe before Bar Mitzvah with one of my brothers, and it was hard to hear what the Rebbe was saying, the bracha that I got. But some things I could pick up. But somebody was there with us who could understand the Rebbe's Chitzach HaDibor. And then when we went out, I wrote down everything that he said. It was a very, very long Geshmaki bracha. Thank God. But the Rebbe was talking. They sang Nugunim in between. The Farbrengen was an hour and a half. It wasn't the marathon Farbrengen. It's 5-6 hours. And it was the tmuna, the picture of what I saw was I said, this is what goes on in Gan Eden. It's mamash Gan Eden. I was totally enamored and lost. I can't even describe it. And if you had a little bit of nerve, and I did have enough nerve for that, when people were going out after the end of Farbrengen, they would open up both doors for people to come in, go in one door, out the other door, and see the Rebbe. And so I went over to the table, and there was a glazel with mashke. I said l'chaim to the Rebbe, nodded. I mean, this was storybook. This is mamash le'yom kisupar. So this is something that the Rebbe did for me. She did it more than once, and then the Rebbe did it for me a few times. And I remember Yud Shvat. In my kittu, and we're Chassidische Bochum, I hope. And we knew that the Rebbe is the Rebbe. Not Yud Shvat Tovshin Yud Aleph, but Yud Shvat Tovshin Yud, before the Batz Legani. That was our Regesh. I don't know how much time I have because I want to get to many things, but you'll stop me when you want. So about 5 or 6 weeks after the Distalkis, the Rebbe was wearing a short reka like this till Chav Dalet Tevis, because he didn't want to accept her or anything, and people thought that he's not. Ich weiß was mit getracht with a short reka. And the Rebbe said he saved a lot of time with the clothing that way. So my father called me from Boston. He was a sheikh, my dad, and there was a sheikh there that had a very serious disease, some atrophy. And my father asked me to ask the Rebbe for bracha. So it tells you where my father stood in the Rebbe. So I wrote a zettel to the Rebbe about this, the sheikh's name and mother's name. And a few hours later, Rabbi Chorokah was looking for me. The Rebbe wants to see you, middle of the day. So I went in, and the Rebbe told this Megashim von Tatna bracha for sheikhet. It seems that the Rebbe knew that medical problem. He says, Boston is the Chashtot, was to do research in medicine, and it takes about 6 months for the research to get to the doctors in their local offices. So try to find out if there's anything new from these research centers, Harvard and MIT, so that you can maybe something coming up. Then he asks me, the Rebbe, Alent Chassidus, the Sheikhet. I said, Ich weiß nicht, I can't say. I don't know who he was. So he says, Zol de Tatelen mit dem Chassidus, it hör mal refuah shlema. Darf doch haben refuah b'derech hateva. Zol de Tatelen mit dem Chassidus, it hör mal refuah. So that was just a few weeks after Yeshvat. So I'm stuck with time. I don't know how much time. As years went by, Tovshin Yudalav, Tovshin Yud Beis, the first year the Rebbe went to I want to get to the Rebbetzin. The Rebbe would go to the Yale in a yellow bus, a school bus. The Bochum and Zal, 20-25 Bochum would go on the bus. The Rebbe would sit in the front seat and would go along. At that time I was still in the Masifta in Bedford and Dean, but I took off. Rabbi Mentlik was kind enough to say okay. So there was no need for a car. The next year, the bus excursion stopped, and the Rebbe went in cars. The verschiedene people went. Yankel Hecht would go. Yisrael Gordon was gesund. Went between 3 or 4 people. About a year later, I'm sitting in the Beis Medrash And Abel Groner he was still a bacher then. He runs into I'm sitting with the chaver. It was at 11:15. I'm sitting learning nigla with a chaver. He says, "Yudel, do you have a license?" I have a license. Why do I have a license? By the way, I was like 17. When I used to, before Mecca Shlichus, I was too young to go, so I went home for 3 weeks in the summer between Yud Beis Tammuz and Chof. So my brothers had a business. They had a new vehicle, and they told me, "Yudel, you're here for the summer. You learn how to drive." I said, "I never thought I'd have a car, let alone drive." But my father didn't have a car. But he said, "Yudel, learn how to drive." Within a week, I had a license. In Massachusetts, you get a license at 16. So I had a license in my pocket. Never thought I'd use it. Label comes running in. "You have a license?" "Yeah." "Did I want to go to the Yale?" I probably was in the mikveh in the morning. I had to get a car. And so I got a car. And I took the Rebbe to the Yale. I was scared, but I was a good driver. As a kid, I was a terrific driver. People would be afraid of me. So once that happened, it was a different ball game. Wie man sagt. So then it became permanent. When I was a bacher, it was every time that I went. I was there. I was in 770 all my life. Yeah, he had in Troy Avenue. He had a car rental. So then it became on that kufa between Tovshin Yud Beis, Tovshin Yud Dalet, Tovshin maybe Tetzvov. The Rebbe called in Bochrim singly to his room in the middle of the day. It's a chiddush by whenever it is, but it was not at night. And he asked about 12, 15 Bochrim, maybe less than 15. And he asked each one what they're learning, Nigla and Chassidus. And he asked each one, if I'm matzia to you to learn something in Nigla and Chassidus, and Chassidus, Chutz Misidrei HaLimud, will you do it? Of course, everybody said yes. At that time, I was still in Bedford and Dean, but the Rebbe called me too. And I came in and had the same shaila, and of course the tshuva was the same. After that, the Rebbe would ask the Bochum to give reports, how much they learned. That's a story in itself. But I want to get to the Rebbetzin. I think back in those years, the Rebbe would walk, back to the teens, the Rebbe would walk into the Zal coming in the morning. He would walk. There was no car business then. He would walk from the house. He would sometimes walk into the Zal, go through the Zal, see which Bochum are there. And then, of course, we had the Friday night Seder. Sometimes it was like from 5 to 8, like 3 hours in this kind of calendar, weather. Yeah. And the Rebbe seems daven with the Kabbalah Shabbos in the shul. I'm talking about 770. There's nothing else. There's nothing else. No, Bochum didn't daven. The Bochum came in after Ma'ariv to learn. So he would come in sometimes Friday night and look around. There were Karinsky is do. There were 20 Bochum maybe that were in the dormitory that were their Shabbos. It was like a father and children. Mamish k'pshute. As the Chvar into the Seit, and he wanted to know where they're holding, and it was something like I remember the Gerari from the Maskell from Eretz Yisrael came once. Mesha Gerari. I knew about him from Yale Khan. He was Farbrengen. He came and he was Farbrengen with the Bochrim and Zal on Monday night, Tuesday night. And he says, among other things, he says, als mit Ben Lubavitch, mit mir gedacht geleben, bin Muna Shleimo, als da in der Szene ist in Welt. You get it? Okay. And that's how we felt. That's how we felt. On Eastern Parkway, that's how we felt. Quick forward. I just want to tell you a story about the Rebbetzin and how she... I don't want to say conspired because it will be misunderstood, with her husband. Bechlal, especially about the Sforim, it lasted for 2 years, and I would bring there was news every day, and I would go into the Rebbe sometimes for half an hour after the stage in court and give a report, and he would invariably tell me that ich soll aber von der Balabosta That's how we referred to the Rebbe in the Balabosta. And Nibbe geben, was sich mesh Nibbe gegeben. She wasn't totally in course. And by the way, you probably know all of this, but when before preparing for the book, for the trial, it started on Yutas Kislev Taka in 1985, 86, 85. Yeah, it was Tovshin Zayin. Memvav, yes. Thank you. I'm glad that you know. So the Rebbetzin was the key person there because she was a Yiddish from her father, and the library allegedly belonged to the father, so it belonged to Hannah, it belonged to her. That's what they thought. So they do, and the judge gives you 3 months to try to prepare for the trial, and in the 3 months you prepare for the trial, you have to gather documents and all kinds of paperwork and do human depositions, which means that somebody from the Tzad Sitracher, from the Tzad Shekeneget, comes and sits you down and asks you questions, sometimes for an hour, sometimes for 2 days. And the kavanah of the deposition is to get you mixed up, so you should say lies, then it doesn't look good at the trial. It's against us. So they decided they wanted to depose the Rebbetzin. And so I asked the Rebbe, how you can't really get out of a deposition. But I went into the Rebbe and I asked the Rebbe, what should we do? The Rebbe said, she can be deposed. You'll see, she'll be okay. I was shocked. The Rebbe says that. And the Rebbe told gerecht. We don't understand it. It's allemal gerecht. So what happened was, months went by, gemattet sich, gemutschet sich, and her time came. And the lawyers agreed that it shouldn't be in a courtroom, the deposition, the questions that it was megete verherren, and not in the lawyer's office. They'll do it in her house, in the living room, in the dining room, in 1304 President Street. The day came, and the other tzad, the Sitracha came with 3 lawyers, and we came with 4 lawyers, and they did a video of it. They put on the video instead of the reporter. And they tried. She asked me to sit next to her. I sat next to her, and she. A lot of things happened that I can't go into, but they shot her. They shot at her for an hour and 20 minutes, and they realized she was so smart, so clever. What most people do in business and other matters of machlekas, when the lawyer asks a question, you talk too much. You're supposed to answer the question. Don't say something else, because then you can open up a door to all kinds of things. She did that on her own. She didn't say not a nibirke word. And it came to the end. I was sitting next to her. I saw the lawyers threw the pencils down in the dining room table. They were frustrated. They thought they would get her, and that would win the case, because she is the most important person in the case, she and her sister. But they saw that Ibrim Estavra, it's a Altkalli gemacht. And then at the last minute, you may have heard the story. Incredible what happened. They said, Mrs. Schneerson, did the books belong to your father or the community? And then we given the ganze Scheile, if it's community, so it's nobody's, it belongs to the community. If it's private, then they divide it up, the case is over. And she said, I might be missing a word or two. She said in English, my father belonged to Chassidim. My father owned nothing. He whatever he had belonged to Chassidim. And then nothing of his own. And then she turned to me. She says, "Tell us in truth." It was so powerful, And it so happens that the last day of the trial, it was a Friday. It was ending the 3rd week, the 15th day of the trial. The judge, for some reason, asked to see the video of her deposition, and he was during the whole trial, he was very non-committal. He didn't laugh, he didn't smile, you didn't know who helped in development here. He was watching for about 15 minutes. Only he could see it because we were sitting at tables in front of him. And he put it off and he says, one word, remarkable. He never should have said that. But that's what happened. I want to tell you a story, and I'll finish with that. This happened in the Lammeds. In the Lammeds, I was already in the mosquitoes for 13, 14 years. It was a winter day, and I picked up a box, not in the office, and it was too heavy for me, and I pulled my back. And I couldn't sit, I couldn't stand, I couldn't walk, I couldn't sleep. It was a terrible, terrible feeling. I didn't know what to do. Come the Krochen Aheim, and I couldn't go to the. It was the first day I couldn't go to the office in all the years. So I was home. So I'm eating supper around 8 with my wife and children about 7:30 at night. The phone rings. I pick up the phone. The Rebbetzin is on the phone. Rabbi Krinsky, what's machter? We talked about a couple of things. It was a pleasure to talk to her. I can't describe her in this short, even in a long period of time. And it's not the first time that I wasn't feeling well, and somehow she sensed it in my voice. So she says, she got to me. She says, what's going on? What happened to you? No, I wouldn't play games with her, so I told her exactly what happened. So in the spirit of the moment, she says, Gedenkt Rabbi Krinsky, mit 2 Jahren zurück hat mir geführt zu a doctor, an orthopedic doctor. She had orthopedic problems. It mir genommen to Dr. Teitz, no relation to Rabbi Teitz from Elizabeth, in New Jersey. Ist gut auf die Sachen. Ich will vier morgens zum Doktor in New Jersey und ich will kriegen an appointment. Gleich auf morgen. She knew she would, and she did. She called me in the house the next morning. He'll see you at any time. I said, I'll make a deal with you, Rebbetzin. I'll go with you. I'll drive. She could drive good, but I didn't want her driving me. I could drive. If I can sit in the car, I can drive too. And that's what happened. So we drove, and we got there, and she went up the stairs with me to the doctor's room. She sat down in the waiting room, like a mother for a child. And the doctor saw me. He was a Jewish man, very nice man. He put me on the table, hat mir gehackt und geklappt und gestochen. It made me feel much better. So I got up and got dressed, and I went downstairs with the Rebbetzin, drove back to her home, Alt Beseder. It was the Rebbe's car, Rebbetzins car. So I parked in the garage in 1304. She went into the house, and I walked to the office. I come to the office. Bechlal, when the Rebbetzin went out in the afternoon, the Rebbe would go home in the afternoon, almost every day in the Yimei Achel, except Friday. And when if she had to go away someplace and wouldn't be home, the Rebbe didn't go home then. Wait till she came home. He had a call from her. So I get back to the office. A few minutes later, there's a buzz from the Rebbe. Chodakov picked it up. He said, the Rebbe says he wants to see you. I went into the room. The Rebbe was standing and smiling. The Yamulke. and he said, how did everything go? He knew what she did. He had some that they were a couple. Thank God. So he says, what did he do? I said what he did. And was it the gesagt? He said, I should walk straight. So that was a conspiracy between those who got married on Yudalat Kislev. Tufresh Pei Test. Am I correct? Do you want to hear anything else? That time is up.
No. Just one second before we conclude. I know that throughout Tafshin Yudalid, not only in the time that you said, the Rebbe said about the Minhagim of Chasna, also a few times that year, the Rebbe gave and delivered different Minhagim of the Chasna. It's Yud Gimel Elul, Nechaf Av, and some people said the Rebbe was training the Bachrim that were there in those days. But if you have specific pratim, like when your children, when they got married, in Minhagi Chasna, that you could share with everybody else, I think it's a a nice,
It's hard
a
to
new
say.
Pearson for today that you'll tell us that we don't know of?
No, I'm not holding any secrets. I mean, the things that, of course, you'll never know, but things that are negated to Rabbi, I would.
There's nothing specific.
I have to think about it.
Not to spend money on pictures. I know there's Farbrengen never spoke about it.
I never heard that ever. You know, today, the fact of the matter is, the only thing you have left is something from a Farbrengen, from a chassan, it's the pictures.
How could you,
So I just want to make, going back to Yudalad, Tafshin,
go to the mic.
going back to the Rebbe Sicher, Yudalad, Neshabes, Pashat Vayetze, wasn't it? Yudalad Kislev was at the end of the Sicher. I saw it just a few days ago. There's something that I don't think I'm wrong. But after the whole Sicher about the Menhogim with the Rebbe Firtuis, after talking about his Chatzene, that again, my brother soll sein Shnas Simcha, und soll sein Chasenes, Ribe Chasenes, und der Tachlis ist, die Mea Bachrus ist Teo, noch ein Chasenes Tikkun. Den Tikkun soll sein Lichel Kol Shamas Shebaguf, und das ist bringen Ben David. And after that, I hope I'm not wrong. I think I'm right. The Rebbe said that the Bochrim should say L'chaim. And that's a bringing from Yudalit Kislev. And they all said L'chaim. The Rebbe waited till they all said L'chaim. Then the Rebbe said to them L'chaim. And he says, wir soll beten, als soll matzliach sein in Limud HaTorah. I don't know the exact words. To me, it seemed that he was saying "Mizol beten the bracha." Mizol beten, the Rebbe mizol beten. So that's the message for the Bochrim. That's eternal, and there's nothing finer for Bochrim to do. And the Rebbe said it when there used to be the Yachas with the Bochrim was very, very close. That Poshet Mizol Zisten Lenin, Nigel Chassidus, and Daven Via Mensch, and Midas Tevis, all those things that are very simple. It seems they're not so simple. But that's what the Rebbe wanted. And that's why the Rebbe is Matzliach. Was and is, mit der Shluchim und der Shluchis und der Kinderlachse in der ganzen Welt, wir kennen die Welt, als Sach mehr, wie wir können meinen. A human being cannot grasp what Shluchim, how they're changing the Jewish landscape all over the world. Some people don't like him. There's a lot of growth for anti-Semitism. It's a Schreck, was tut sich in der Welt ein. Aber Bochum darf sitzen in Lenin, and Junge Leute darf in Shluchim, or the Helfen Shluchim. Everyone has a specific shluchis cut out for them. They don't have to go. When I get up in the morning, where I'm supposed to go? You know where to go.
Just one thing, I've once heard that the Rebbe told you that they should learn Drush Chasna. If it's true, if you remember it or not, one of your kids by the Chasnas, the Rebbe said to learn Drush Chasna.
I remember the Rebbe told people learning the Samach to Samach.
Okay.
By the Chasna.
Okay. So maybe that's what I was
you
referring to. I know. I heard it that there's some here.